up first, my panel. Let's bring them in. Senior Fellow at the Menzies Research Centre, Nick Cater. Liberal MP from South Australia, James Stephens. Gents, welcome. The Coalition, James, has accused the Treasury Department of breaching the Public Service Act. This is pretty serious. This is in relation to costings work they did regarding opposition policy. That's not on. That's against the rules. It's been revealed, though, because of a Senate order, that, some of the financial assumptions were based on old social media posts, almost a decade old. What do you make of this?
Well, Peter, Jim Chalmers runs a political hit job like he does an economy, pretty poorly, frankly. And yeah, these revelations are in some ways not a surprise, because when Jim Chalmers released this information, it clearly didn't stack up. The criticism was way off, and now we find that Treasury have conceded through the release of these documents that the way in which Jim Chalmers characterised what they'd done is completely inaccurate. And I think there's more questions to be asked about the conduct of certain Treasury officials on this matter, but also Jim Chalmers needs to front up, explain himself and apologise for misleading the Australian people.
Yes, I think after the revolution, if it was to happen, I think Stephen Kennedy, the head of Treasury, would be the first to go on my list. Let's go to energy, Nick, because something unusual is happening in the business community. We're starting to see business stand up and defend Australia's national interest on energy. A whole lot of the energy groups have come out there, and one of them particularly, Beach Energy, is in the Australian today, saying that voters, if you hand over the keys to government to a minority government, that would be a horrific outcome for Australians who are already suffering from cost of living pressures. Now, he's not wrong, but we've also got BP announcing plans to cut back on its renewable energy investments and put its focus back on fossil fuels. So, Nick, what's happening?
Well, I think the BP announcement is very interesting. BP was British Petroleum until 2001, when it changed its name to Beyond Petroleum because it thought it was old hat. Now they say they're going back to fossil fuels, presumably largely to oil and petrol, which is their core business and where they became a very successful company. And this, we see this, of course, they're just following the market on this one, in the sense that renewable electric vehicle sales have declined around the world or plateaued everywhere except places like China, where they're heavily subsidised by the government. And this is a recognition, I think, that we're not going to get to those ambitious 2030 targets, so we better just focus on keeping the lights on. And they're following many other companies around the world, particularly the high-tech companies in America, in recognising this. But I think that just goes to show how out of step our government is. It's now pushing against world trends on this. And I think I share those concerns very deeply about the election of a minority Labor government, which would have to rely on either the Greens or the Teals or both. And I think when you see what Kate Cheney came out with on Monday, the Teal MP, for Curtin in Western Australia, in saying she didn't want to see the gas industry given a new lease of life. So basically the end of gas, offshore gas in WA. That'd be a disaster, not only for our economy, but certainly for our energy system, because if we're going to be stuck with so much unreliable wind and solar, we are going to need gas to back it up. That is simply a fact. That's not a political point. That is an engineering fact, and we'll be in deep trouble without it.
Correct. We've been talking about defence, so we talk about defence a lot, obviously, but the threat of China is real. Senate estimates have revealed that the new recruiting firm hired to fix the ADF's recruitment woes is almost 30% behind in its target. It's also had its performance period extended. I might add, it takes sort of 8 to 12 months to process any applicants, and by that time, James Stephens, 90% of them are dropping out. It just takes too long.
Well, Peter, this is one of many reasons why we need Andrew Hastie to be Australia's Defence Minister as soon as humanly possible, because this is one of many things that we can't be casual about. And the Labor government are clearly dismissing very genuine concern about the ability to hit these targets. It's something that we all recognise is vitally important for our national security. We're investing enormous amounts of money into capability, but we need the personnel to be recruited in the ADF to, of course, do what needs to be done to defend our nation and our national interests. Labor's casual attitude is completely unacceptable.
Nick Katie, you wrote a terrific piece about Tony Burke's citizenship blitz. We've discussed it here on the program. I think all Australians should be horrified about what he's doing with the politics here. But you argued, interestingly, that he made a tactical error by drawing attention to immigration ahead of the election.
I think it's a huge error, Peter. So in search of, it's obvious that what he was doing was enrolling people as citizens, fast-tracking them, because, you know, the view is that they were more likely to vote Labor than the coalition. Not all of them will vote Labor, incidentally. So if he's, you know, for 6,000 citizenship certificates that he handed out like confetti at the weekend, the number of actual votes coming to Labor across a range of seats is going to be pretty small. But the consequence of that, of course, is being, you know, on television in these massive sort of, almost like the old Korean mass weddings, you know, in front of all these people, wonderful people, all of them, I'm sure, and we welcome them as Australian citizens. But the optics for Tony Burke and the government at this time, when they really are on the nose with immigration, is deeply troubling. I mean, I hear from on the ground in Cunningham and Whitlam, which are down in the Illawarra region, that the number one issue, of course, cost of living. Number two issue, immigration. People are really concerned about this, and I think if the government doesn't lose this election on cost of living, they will lose it on immigration.
I think you're probably right, Nick. I think about social cohesion being part of that as well. Gentlemen, thank you.